Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your agenda is in order and ready for your approval. We would like to recommend moving item number 51 to the end of the agenda so that we can hear items of importance prior to other board meetings, other board members needing to leave.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your second item is to receive the General Manager's report. Our first item is one of my favorites. This is Superstar of the Quarter. And this quarter, we're pleased to recognize not just one, but 3 superstars collectively. On a daily basis, they demonstrate unparalleled customer service, and they've helped to save the agency over $130,000 just over the last year. You know, we've had some very intense public outreaches and public communications and throughout the valley, dealing with our fare increase and our service changes. In fact, this group has handled nearly 200 outreaches. They have spoken personally to over 1,500 constituents, and they have not left a single question unanswered or unaddressed. They continuously work to generate new ideas for which the RTC more efficiently and effectively communicates with our riders. These 3 individuals are an asset to the agency, model RTC team members, and exemplary superstars of the quarter. Let me introduce to you our superstars, Anna Diaz, Jesse Diaz, and Eileen Pastor. I'd like to have them come forward and take a photograph. No,
This was the item where it was all discussed, where they canceled because of proposals and what they're saying. It's not expressed in here. That was the whole basis of our willingness to do this. And there's in the minutes of this item.
Get it ready to squeeze in. All right, squeeze in. There you go. Get a couple more. Every smile. Thank you.
Make sure it's on. I just want to say thank you. This really means a lot to us. I'd like to thank Jody, my supervisor, as well as Jackie Dennis, my director, and our assistant general manager, MJ. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, your next item in the General Manager's report is an update on SB 506. Last year's legislative session, the legislature approved the bill that gave the RTC the authority to establish a public-private partnership project in connection with the Boulder City Bypass. Funding for this project has been a challenge, and this bill allows the RTC to utilize public-private partnerships, including the option for a toll road in order to construct the bypass. Here's a graphic showing the alignment, and you can see it'll alleviate many of the traffic concerns in Boulder City by providing an option for travelers who want to drive around Boulder City rather than through it, should they choose. The project has 2 phases. Phase 1, which you see in green over to the left, will be constructed by NDOT, and that phase extends from I-515 at Foothills Drive to US 95. Now, the RTC's portion of this project is Phase 2, which is shown in blue, and that phase is approximately 12 miles long. This project may become part of a proposed Interstate 11. Interstate 11 is proposed to connect Las Vegas and Phoenix, as well as potentially extend into south into Mexico and north into Canada. So it's a very regionally significant and important project for Southern Nevada. Milestones for the project. Number 1 was to select an engineering and financial analysis firm. That is completed. We selected Lewis Berger. Number 2 is to complete an agreement between NDOT and RTC for coordination of the 2 phases, and again, that is complete. Next milestones, Louis Berger will report back to us in the fall with updated traffic and toll revenue studies. We'll also revise the NEPA document to reflect tolling. And in the end, we will have a request for information and interest from potential private partners. That'll be winter of 2012. We'll provide a legislative update next spring to the legislature, and then by the fall of next year, we should be able to bring you a recommendation on the type of public-private partnership that makes the most financial sense for the project. We know the residents in Boulder City are very interested in this project, and we're hosting an open house later this month to share this information with them. The meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 28th, from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Boulder Creek Golf Club. This will be the first of many public hearings over the course of the process. We want to ensure that the residents are kept abreast of the plans. And we did present to Boulder City Council, and thank you for hosting it, allowing us to do that. Mr. Chairman, that concludes your general manager's report.
Thank you. Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm frustrated. I'm going to put my private sector hat on why it takes so long for something so significant to take place. And first of all, I don't know why anybody would want to drive around Boulder City. Boulder City's beautiful. It's a great city. And I'm not saying that just because you're sitting down there, Mayor. It is, and you know it. But this is a project of great significance, and I think I'm challenged because bureaucracy is so slow in getting us where we need to be. So I'm just voicing my personal frustration with the process. I think you've done a great job, but I would say run and don't walk. That's how significant this project is.
Duly noted, and I think we are excited to run. We recognize that this has got significant regional impacts in terms of our economic development. Creating a corridor between Las Vegas and Phoenix and eventually north and south is very important for Southern Nevada in our economic health.
Mayor Tobler.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think that's the key. Before, it was never recognized as a regional project. And I think with all the changes with the bridge opening, we now recognize that this needs to be done. So I want to thank RTC, did a great job, and we look forward to having you out there in Boulder City on the 28th.
We have nicknamed this project the 11. We can't, because we truly believe it is the first phase of I-11, but it hasn't officially been designated as an interstate yet, so we can't call it the first phase of I-11. We call it the 11.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Ross.
I think as a regional transportation commission, we can call it any dang thing we want to.
Okay.
And if that's
Let's
what we want to
the
call
first
it, that's what we
phase-
call
The
it.
first phase of the 11. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, your next item is to receive a report from the Nevada Department of Transportation Director. She is not here today, so with your permission, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is to conduct your first comment period for citizens' participation.
Okay. This period is set aside for those that wish to speak on an agenda that is posted today. General comments will be reserved for after the meeting during the general comment period. So again, this is reserved for those wishing to speak on a specific agenda item. Mark Landison, item number 51.
Thank you, Commissioner. It is an all too common habit of human nature and unfortunately an unfortunate attribute we sometimes possess to not fully appreciate in their totality the significant achievements and accomplishments of a particular individual until the curtain has fallen and they have exited the stage. Today I wish to honor our former General Manager Jacob Snow, and in particular the depth of the wisdom and vision he had in the formulation of his Complete Streets initiative. I'm aware of the fact that the implementation of Jacob's vision will undoubtedly be a very long process, but I am a work in progress with regard to my exercising of patience, and I very much look forward to that point going forward in our future when significant results can be seen on our most congested city and county streets. Jacob's primary goal was to slow down the flow of traffic and increase the safety of our pedestrians and transit riders. Only as recently as last Friday night, I sat at a bus shelter bench along Maryland Parkway and witnessed a significant percentage of the vehicles on the streets traveling well in excess of the speed limit. While two scooters, one powered by an engine and the other powered by human propulsion, raced by me in opposite directions only a few feet in front of me on the sidewalk while I was seated at that shelter. Only a few days earlier, I had been seated at this same bus shelter bench and had witnessed two bicyclists similarly racing by in opposite directions. Clearly, we need not only to devise strategies to slow down vehicle traffic on our roads, but additionally to slow down bicycles and scooters speeding along our sidewalks, particularly within a 300-foot radius of our bus stops and bus shelters. And as an aside, I want to thank our TC Commissioner Chris G., who's been made aware of these conditions, and for her ongoing efforts in notifying and working with the metro area commands to watch out for these speeding sidewalk, bicycle, and scooter offenders. It will take the creative efforts, input, and ideas of all concerned with these issues, RTC staff, RTC commissioners, and the general public, to transform the current reality on our streets into Jacob Snow's dream and vision for safer streets. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mark. We have Patricia Anderson on items 53 and 54.
Well, good morning, Good morning, everyone. Like I said, I've been with the drivers since 2001 with these drivers. I'm not going to take a long time because I know you have a long agenda. But the drivers are great drivers. Breaking up the yards would be a disaster. Number two, the drivers need more recovery time, and you need to recover because actually they're on route. Okay, they're going from Boulder Highway to Fort Apache. Within 10 minutes, they don't have time to use the restrooms, what have you. This is not fair to them. Okay? Because simple reason is you have to respect the drivers. See, I'm from New York City. This would never happen. Okay? And first, number one, they would have a total shutdown. I mean, they did it in 1996. The union guy does not, they don't play in New York.
Ms. Anderson, these
Okay,
have
I'm
to be
sorry.
directed to an agenda item.
I am, yes. But I'm just letting you know that respecting the drivers, what have you, is concerned. And as far as breaking up the yards and all that's concerned, it should not happen. Okay? You have your Sahara, you have your Charleston, you have your Decatur route, and you have your Simmons. Let things alone and give them more recovery time. Okay?
Thank you. And remember, your general comments can be accepted at the end of the meeting also. We have John Mosley speaking on the draft RFP, which would be somewhere 52, 53, 54. Good morning.
Good morning, Honorable Commissioners. Ideally, I wanted to follow my president,
And I could do that, Mr. Mosley, if you'd like me to. I could
if
bring-
that's possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Mendoza?
Good morning, Commissioners. Jose Mendoza Jr., Amalgamated Transit Union President for Local 1637. At this time, I want to make some comments, around 8 comments, on behalf of the bargaining unit, and my final closing comments will be on my own as a Las Vegas resident. First and foremost, the local cannot believe that the bargaining unit employees have been treated as second-class citizens. That's one point. The second point is the RFP will create chaos and confusion to the hardworking residents and citizens of Las Vegas who use public transportation by trying to implement 2 private contractors to do the work of what one is doing right now. Third, we cannot believe that RTC staff would try to violate our First Amendment rights of our Constitution by instructing Barton Security to try to remove 3 of our staff by passing out flyers to the passengers at the BTC. 4, this proposed RFP draft that the RTC staff drafted must be rejected by the commissioners because our current CBA is not even being addressed. 5, why is it that the RTC staff can negotiate a CBA with the current labor organization and not with us? We believe a new RFP here is trying to bust this local. 6, it is the ATU's belief that the RFP violates NRS 332.065, 338.1389, and 338.140. 7, this RFP draft is doing ill will to the bargaining unit, and we also believe that the RTC is in violation to the 13C agreement they made back in September 14th with the September 1994 with the Labor Department when they applied for federal grants. And finally, we know that the RTC depends on the tourist fares from the Deuce and Ace, and apparently it seems like they care more about that instead of the poor citizens and residents of Las Vegas who really work here and use the service. My final comment is on the fact that I resent, as a Las Vegas resident, being threatened and intimidated by the PTC security officers to try to throw us the property when we're using our rights to provide information to the public. I am a reservist, retired, 20 years of service, and I wanted to bring that to your attention, that we are citizens and we should be treated as American citizens, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mosley?
Good morning. My name is John Mosley. I'm an executive board officer with the ATU Local 1637. In addition to some of the concerns that were raised by President Mendoza, we also, as a union, have concerns with the RFP, and in addition, the draft contract. While it is nice that the draft contract does make mention to the September 94 13C agreement between ourselves and the public body, I and my peers wish that the RTC management had taken heed of the agreement when they brought forth this RFP. Our agreement gives us or obligates the RTC to giving us a 75 days written certified notice of any contemplated action which would result in the potential displacement or rearrangement of the workforce. The RFP is scheduled to come out the second week, I believe, of next month, as is scheduled currently, and that is in no way, shape, or form 75 days notice. Under the previous general manager, Mr. Snow, the union expressed a desire to enter into negotiations to negotiate these items we felt may have an adverse effect on the bargaining unit. That was ignored by the RTC. I can say this, that our union is very unified in opposing the splitting of the system, and that through our lawyers, we will carefully review how this RFP came to be, as well as the contents, and we will file complaints with the proper government agencies, both state and federal. I have nothing else to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosley. Carolyn Higgins?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Carolyn Higgins, and I'm here speaking on the behalf of the bus drivers and mechanics running this city through these large buses and transporting all of our riders. What we are dealing with right now is what we consider, and I don't know for layman's term, I can't say it any differently, but tight paddles. We have no time to one point, which is important to us for our health reasons, to go to the bathroom. A lot of our layovers right now are in very odd locations where we're having to cross the street, which becomes a safety issue. We have our mechanics out there constantly fixing our buses due to the heat, but we don't have time to even cool our buses down, okay? Our riders, they're the most affected by this because with our schedule being so tight, our riders are out there and you can see them running for the buses because of the connection issues. The 504, it's getting better, but it's still an issue, and I constantly hear that. And we'd like for the commissioners to be aware that our concerns are for our riders, the safety of our drivers, the safety of our riders, the safety of the pedestrians, the safety of all the cars that ride around along with us. So please take that into consideration when the schedules they may change in September, is take a look at your drivers that are out there every day moving these buses, moving people, important commodities through this city. Just take a look at it and then wonder if you've made the right decision and how you've scheduled our paddles. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Mr. Kern and Mr. Adams on item number 52. Now,
We can wait until item 52, Mr. Chairman.
okay, 52 will be receiving a report from staff. 53 will be the designated time that any applicants that wish to speak. So, is that, is there anyone else wishing to speak on a specific agenda item? Please step forward, come forward and put your name on the record. And there's a portable mic if that's more convenient.
This will come down fine. Yeah, that works. My name is Dean Kelly. I have lived in Las Vegas. Next month will make 30 years. I am a former coach operator for ATC / ATC Vancom / Veolia, etc., for approximately 12 years. I am a member now of the disabled community, so I get 1.1 votes. I have been a bus patron and passenger literally since before I was born because my mother was not a driver. I was transported in utero on buses, so I learned at a very early age 3 absolutes in life. 2 and 2 is 4. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and you need to have exact fare to ride the bus. I have a couple of comments regarding items 20 and 22, regarding the proposals for contracts or whatever with the City of Las Vegas and the City of North Las Vegas regarding bus turnouts. I believe that the expansion of the concept of bus turnouts without a yield to buses law is counterproductive. You constantly tighten the schedules, increase the penalties or whatever to drivers for being down, but when you pull a bus into a bus turnout to service the bus stop, the POVs passing will not let the bus back into traffic, thereby increasing the downtime. The passengers down the line get mad because the bus is late. The drivers are frustrated because they get to the end of the line and have to turn and burn, such like that. It just doesn't make any sense. And yet when I petition my assemblyman, my senator, and you folks, you say that you don't want to yield to buses law. And I don't understand the principle of it. If you're going to have cooperation between POVs and transit, or even encourage people to take transit, you got to make it more practical for them. As regarding item 54, I see a potential impracticality of having to divide a responsibility between the yards. If you've got a north-south route where you've got a bus based in the north end, stuck at the south end, then you've got to send a coach from that end or a driver from that end That increases the relief time. I realize there are potential legal and economic and competitive benefits, but I think they're outweighed by the practicality issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on an agenda item? Okay. We'll close this portion. Good morning. If you could just state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is James Romero. Good morning to everybody here for hearing me. I'm over here for First Transit. And I came here last month, and there was a lot of frustration on my point, a lot of yelling by my point. I apologize. So I'm going to be a little bit more clear and not speak so loud.
If you could just move that mic up just a little bit, thank you.
Okay. I'm a little frustrated. I was told 7 months ago by 3 people from our union that we were going to have a sit-down with Mrs. G concerning items that are going on with our company. And it still has not still has not happened.
Okay, James, I need you to speak specifically on an agenda item. We have a portion at the end of the meeting.
Okay, fine. My concern is still the safety of our drivers.
Okay.
Okay. Like this young lady just passed with the fixed route, the big buses. We also have small buses that cater to the community. And again, I'm not going to give names, but I can tell you right now of 7 drivers that I'm sure you know the word depends. There's a certain type of a diaper that they are forced to wear because we have no relief. We cannot use the restroom. And I am trying to get something implemented like how the school bus drivers are, where they have an aide, because we also have DNLUs on the bus that has been pushed by RTC that we are not to leave them on the bus unattended, but yet we are forced to get off the bus, let go of a client on a scooter and a wheelchair, and your policy, RTC, is no more than arm's length. Well, unless I'm Mr. Stretch, I am more than 1 arm length away from that. So if a DNLU wants to go ahead and get on the bus and take off, they can. So again, I'm trying to get something implemented so that way the bus driver can make restroom breaks and not continue to wear Depends, because that is very insulting when we're trying to provide for your clients. You depend on their money. We're the ones that are in the trenches giving you this money. Look out for your drivers. Also, I'm tired of RTC, the monitors that drive around looking at the drivers to find anything they can to find the drivers and to find our company. Drivers are busy as it is. If RTC monitor is out at one of our locations and they don't see it like this, and if it's like this, that's a fine against the company. To me, that's harassment. Drivers got too much to worry about than to worry about a stupid badge facing forward. So RTC needs to find another way they want to find our company. And the last thing, I had someone at our company, our general manager, who had the nerve to tell me if I was afraid to come here to these meetings and express my thoughts. Well, I guess that answers this question, because I'm not afraid.
Thank you. All right, we'll close this portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is your consent agenda, which is made up of items 5 through 50 and may be taken in one motion.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, we'll move on to item number 52, which is to receive a report on the major issues identified through the industry review process for project number 12-081, Fixed Route Transit Services, Operations, and Maintenance. Lydia Belinsky, our Senior Purchasing Analyst, will present you those items.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Lydia Belinsky. I'm going to present the report on key feedback received during the industry review process on the fixed route RFP 12-081. There's 10 main points. Point 1 was the basis of award. The majority of the participants prefer the best value RFP. Proposers should be bound by the technical proposal in a two-step procurement. Another key point was do not consider pricing in step one of a two-step procurement, and clarify whether one firm can be awarded both contracts if it's in the best interest of the RTC and the community. A couple of options here. Option one to deal with basis of award questions is to do a best value RFP, which is an award based on weighted technical factors and price. Possible weight ranges for the technical would be 30 to 70%. Same thing for price. You could rate that anywhere 30, 70% to total 100. Option two would be a two-step hybrid best value RFP. Step one, we would receive a technical score. Proponents would have to score within 90% of the top-ranked proposer to move on to step two and be qualified to compete. And step two would then be a combination of weighted price and technical criteria, making it best value. The board may wish to consider a two-step hybrid best value RFP with a significant weight assigned to price. The consumer price index calculation for option year compensation was another area of concern we received input on. The CPI poses a risk to proposers, especially in the option years. The way the RFP was written, or the draft contract, it had a 3% cap and no floor. CPI does not adequately account for labor costs, especially health benefits, and that risk translates into higher prices. That was the key feedback received. The board may wish to consider eliminating the CPI and to have the proposers price the option years. The length of the option period was also a risk. The risk to proposers if options were not mutual or do not have a negotiation opener, renegotiation opener. After our RFP survey, we took a look at it. The board may wish to consider to modify the proposed option years in contracts as follows. Lot A, 4-year base with a 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 option years, which still equals the original 12. And Lot B, a 5-year base with a 2 + 2 + 1 option year, which still equals the 10 years. Labor transition average wage was another area of concern. Several firms requested average wage be used for bidding purposes with an opportunity to readjust the contract service rates once a collective bargaining agreement and staffing roster was finalized. The board may wish to consider the preference in hiring, providing the current collective bargaining agreement and seniority list to proposers in the RFP will allow proposers to calculate and model estimated wages based on their own assumptions. A vehicle acquisition plan was an area of concern. The contract, the input was that the contract should have language to allow for rate negotiation and possible rate adjustment if the vehicle replacement acquisition plan was not met. The board may wish to consider adding an opener language for possible negotiated rate adjustments if key elements of the vehicle acquisition plan are not met, and add language to allow for RTC flexibility in the plan by tying the plan into a mileage timeframe range and/or budget cycle. Allowable service changes, Area 6. The current language for rate adjustment is not cumulative from the base service hours. There was no language currently to trigger a rate adjustment if route reassignment exceeds 10%, which is a sub-factor of the service change. The board may wish to consider adding language to make 10% allowable service change cumulative over the base service hours as in effect at contract award, and to allow for rate adjustment if route reassignment exceeds 10% of the base allocated routes. Also, for possible to add language for a possible negotiated rate adjustment if there is a significant change in fleet distribution during the term of the contract. Liquidated damages were also an area of input. Generally, LDs add risk and costs due to the nature, amount, and type of liquidated damages listed in the current contract schedule. The board may wish to consider that staff is reviewing the proposed liquidated damage schedule and will categorize and streamline for the final contract draft. Class 1 and Class 2 equipment, definition and maintenance responsibility. Clarification as to the differences between Class 1 and Class 2 equipment. Clarification as to the equipment maintenance and replacement responsibility for each class of equipment. Staff is currently reviewing the current equipment list to make a final determination of what equipment falls into which class and what the RTC and contractor responsibilities will be for each class, and will clarify that in the RFP and contract documents. Startup transition plan also received some comments. The input was that RTC should request more detail on the startup and transition plan in the proposal. The board may wish to consider that more detail should be requested as part of the transition and startup plan. And Area 10 was the price sheet detail. Input received stated that price forms should include more detail. Price forms should include each bidder to identify assumptions for each cost line item on the price sheet in the proposal. Eliminate price from step 1 in the two-step procurement process. And there was several concerns listed about the alternate pricing language that was in the draft contract and RFP. The board may wish to consider eliminating price from step 1 in a two-step procurement process, and that the price sheets should be revised to include more detail and formatted so that each proponent can provide their assumptions used to develop costs line by line. That's all I have. That's a pretty quick summary, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Comments or questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify, when you started off, out of the other firms that you all kind of double-checked with as to what they did process-wise, is it still accurate that 100% of the respondents used an RFP best value approach?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's the industry standard.
And that the average price weighting was 28.6% versus technical at 71.3%?
That is correct.
Okay, and then in your comment, you gave us a range to talk about from 30 to 70%, even though the average in the industry is 28 point some odd percent.
Right, that was just for board consideration.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Very good. Item number 53 is to, I need to read it. It's not conducted. Item number 53 is to conduct a public hearing on the major issues identified through the industry review process for project number 12-081, fixed route transit services, operations and maintenance. And I'm actually going to reread that item as it's been updated. Item number 53 is to receive additional feedback from industry review participants based on the review of the solicitation documents for project number 12-081, fixed route transit services, operations and maintenance.
Okay, so this is not a public hearing, just to clarify for the record?
Technically, on the agenda, it is not a public hearing officially. It was noticed to just receive the input from the participants from the industry review.
Very good. So those from the industry that participated in the last 90-day process, this is your opportunity to make any comments on what staff just presented as status report, or likewise make any comments you feel appropriate to the board at this time.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, Chris Kempfer here on behalf of Veolia. First of all of us at Veolia want to commend Tina, MJ, and Lydia, at the fear of forgetting anybody, everybody else at the RTC staff for the open and honest manner in which this RFP process has been conducted. Ideas and comments of anyone and everyone in the industry were received and fairly discussed, and we very much appreciate that. Talking to Tina and MJ, you get the feeling that your experience matters, your ideas matter, your comments matter, that you matter. And we really do appreciate that, because I know being part of the process makes it easier for everyone. So thank you for the respect you show us. I can assure you it's mutual, and we look forward to continuing to work with you throughout this process. Speaking of that process, Mr. Chairman, as it winds its way to a conclusion in the issuance of the 2 RFPs, I believe, and I'm probably on dangerous ground saying that I do speak for everybody in the industry, but I know that I speak for those with whom I've discussed some of these issues. We all want to avoid at all costs the uncertainty and the confusion and ultimately the acrimony that existed at the last RFP process. Nobody wants to go through that again. Maybe the attorneys who billed hundreds of hours, I guess, but I'm not one of those, and so I'm more than happy to have this proceed down a different path and operate smoothly and efficiently to a fair and equitable result. In order to do that, I think we all agree that we have to have a completely fair and level playing field so that all parties know exactly what they're bidding on, and we're bidding on exactly the same thing, so that everything is level and we're all operating under the same set of rules. We all want to establish, I believe, and ensure that the RFP process is not based solely on lowest bid. Although there's an attractiveness, obviously, to that, the truth is that when you award the lowest bid, it does not award other important things like service and commitment, vision, experience, and especially an experience needed to protect and maintain your over $500 million in investment in the equipment that you have. So in other words, I think we're all on board to the fact that an award that is based on the best value and not money alone should be initiated. Also, we believe that everyone is on board that in order to create real certainty for the most important people in this process, that being the drivers and maintenance personnel, whose salary and benefits should not be dependent on the company for whom they work, but on the service they perform. The individuals who drive these buses have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment literally in their hands. And more importantly, literally hundreds of lives in their hands as they drive those buses. We need skilled people to drive those buses. And skilled people need to be paid and are entitled to be paid fair wages with full benefits. I don't think anyone really wants our buses to be driven by people who are least experienced, least paid. That's a no-win for everybody, and certainly probably a no-win, especially for those who are riding those buses. We want to pay to get and keep the most experienced and highly skilled force available. And remember, unlike the private sector, these drivers and maintenance folks do not really get to choose for whom they work. They work for whoever is awarded the contract. And it is unfair to them to make them have to weigh in as participants in this process so that they can say, who are they rooting for, which company are they rooting for? Commissioner June Kiliani called it them being pawns, and she did not want them to be pawns in this particular process, and no one does. They should just know that regardless of who gets their contract, they are assured of a fair wage. Finally, with the 2 different contracts and the 2 different RFPs, we must find a way working together, and I'm confident that we can, to distribute those employees in a fair and equitable manner between those 2 contracts, so that there is a reasonable division of those employees based on seniority, wage and benefit costs, qualifications, and experience. Otherwise, all of the experienced employees may go with one contract, and the other contract is left with the inexperienced employees, which may save money, but in the long run may not because of the inexperience that goes along with that. So the bottom line is, due to the great efforts, and I mean that, of your RTC staff, we're almost there. Some issues remain to be ironed out, but we are confident that continuing the work with the common sense and goodwill that has been exhibited so far, and I know will continue to be exhibited by both sides, we'll get there soon. So thank you again to everyone. This is proceeding, I think, in a very orderly and appropriate fashion, and with a couple of issues to be ironed out, I think we're done. So Tina, MJ, Lydia, thank you all very much for all you do, and everyone else in the RTC staff. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Kempfer. Is there anyone else wishing to speak under this agenda item?
Good morning. My name is Nick Promponis, and I'm Senior Vice President with First Transit. Rather than go over every tidbit that Chris just spoke to, we feel the same way about staff, and we're also as sympathetic as Veolia is for the plight of the employees that have gone through, quite frankly, a pretty painful process over the last 12 months. It's been painful for all of us, the employees, the 2 companies, staff, and certainly you, the public policy body. So I'm going to make my comments as brief as I can, really just to highlight our point. And, you know, ultimately what we're looking for is the simplest and most direct way to get through this next solicitation, because certainly the last one was circuitous, to say the least, and how we got to where we got. But what we're looking for, in essence, is a 2-step process. That's our recommendation to you, where you qualify all vendors up front and make your qualification process as stringent as you possibly can, quite frankly. And then once you get through that process, then it becomes a matter of opening up an envelope and seeing what price everybody has delivered. And then you award to the lowest price provider. That's simple. But the qualification process should entail all of the other details that we're all talking about: wages, benefits, all of those things. So once you're qualified, you've put that issue behind you, and then it comes down to price. And the issue should not be arguable at that point. The second piece that we'd like to talk about is that, you know, our position has really not changed going back to last December, quite frankly, during the December 8th meeting, where you folks had the chance to really debate what the next solicitation might look like. The truth of the matter, we believe that the simplest way for you to go is not only to split the work into 2 contracts, but also to make sure that you award to 2 separate contractors. That the likelihood is that another firm, could be our firm, could be standing up here in front of you as the low bidder on both. And then where does that place you? Well, it places you where you were a year ago, to be quite frank. So the truth of the matter is, if we're that firm, if we're standing there, then we will stand by our agreement with you, and we will take one of those 2 pieces, whichever piece you decide we should have, and we move on. So that's our position. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Mosley, let me get a ruling here. Now, the ATU did participate over the last 90 days. It's appropriate to let them comment during this agenda item?
That's correct. They were a participant in the industry review.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, John Mosley, Executive Board Officer with the ATU Local 1637. I have to bring the concerns of the union, primarily with the decision to draft the RFP in such a manner as it would guarantee the contract to be split between two separate contractors, even if one contractor presented the best bid for both yards. Nevada Revised Statute number 338.1389 says a public body or its authorized representative shall award a contract for public work for which the estimated cost exceeds $250,000 to the contractor who submits the best bid. When I read that the RFP is written in a way as to play a shell game, that management will arbitrarily decide whether or not you have the best bid to award on some other criteria that's not spoken for in the law, it raises concern. It raises concern because this process and how this RFP has come to be was to appease a private company who had a lawsuit pending against the RTC. It was a big mess, and I agree with the gentleman from Veolia who spoke before me that we don't want to see a mess repeated. To disregard the language that's set in law, to decide between two separate contractors for the sole purpose of splitting the yards, which we as a union believe is solely for union busting, I think is bad business. And I don't share that opinion when it comes to my constituents. Every other elected officer, every bargaining unit member at large, union member or not, agrees that we do not want to see the contract split. Moreover than just the union's interest, it's also the public's interest. Having one contractor allows for a flexibility between yards when it comes to shortage of manpower between yards, to have one yard cover for the other. When it comes to equipment breakdowns, we're able to send fills from one yard to the other. Two contractors, you do not get that flexibility. It will impede service, and it will be the public that also pays the price for this. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I have no further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mosley.
Again, Jose Mendoza, Jr.,
Mr.
President.
Mendoza, you're getting 2 bites of the apple.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We just want to close by saying that, as we stated before, we feel that we are being pawns. I guess probably Commissioner Chris G. understands that as well. But we just want to have a regular employer, and hopefully whatever happens here, you guys go back to the old RFP the way it should be. We don't want to be splitting the system. We don't want to be having to tell our members that their seniority rights are going to be leaving to certain companies, and it's just going to be a mess. And we do not want to have a work stoppage either, because we do want to have a collective bargaining agreement in place with whoever takes over of fixed route. Thank you much.
Thank you. Mr. Kaplan, before Mr. Kern speaks, is it possible, as we move on to agenda item number 54, that we leave agenda item 53 open to allow dialogue in case the board needs to ask questions with those prior speakers?
Yeah, that's the board's discretion. If that's how you want to handle it, you can do that. Combine the two matters and continue to hear 53 along with 54.
Okay. Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Kern, go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Bill Kern with Ballard Spar Firm, 100 North City Parkway, appearing on behalf of Keolis Transportation along with their Senior Vice President, Kevin Adams. At the outset, I'd like to echo what some of the others have said in commending your staff on having conducted a very open and I think helpful opportunity for the members of the industry to discuss key issues and make suggestions, and I think that that's going to make for a better process and a better result for everybody. So far, so good. We appreciate your having worked with us. There's a couple of items that Mr. Adams will address, and I'll defer to him.
Thank you, Bill. Again, my name is Kevin Adams. I'm Senior Vice President with Keolis Transit America. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, and staff. Keolis Transit America would like to commend you and thank you for establishing the industry review process. It's been an open process, transparent. It's been incredibly helpful, and has resulted in all of us, I think, having a greater understanding of what you want to accomplish with this procurement. Staff has been incredibly professional and responsive throughout the process. We particularly appreciate to have had preliminary facility tours, and the discussions on price risk mitigation have been absolutely excellent, and hopefully will result in a better RFP. Sufficient and clear information in the RFP process is what makes for successful procurements. It results in better proposals and more consistent pricing, and we believe you will achieve that. I'd like to comment on a couple of the issues. We entered this process with the understanding that the contract would be split and that there would be two providers. Frankly, we think that's a good idea, instilling that local competition. We are willing to participate however you decide to package it. But if you allow combining into one, our concern is it may open up additional litigation and take us right back to where we were at the end of the last procurement. And that would be costly for everybody. On the issue of CPI, frankly, the idea of excluding the CPI, we're not exactly in alignment with that. We think that you continue with the CPI. Our concern was that the draft RFP allowed for a negative CPI, and in that case, the annual pricing could go down. We think in the event of a negative CPI, you should simply open that year up to negotiations. We think that's a reasonable approach. On the issue of contract length, some vendors had suggested that contract length is risky. In fact, a longer contract provides you lower pricing. If we're able to amortize equipment and those things over 10 or 12 years, 8 years, it's much better than amortizing everything over 5 years in the first part of the contract because the options are questionable. On the issue of labor, just a general comment. First of all, we respect labor and we work with labor. They become our employees, they become part of our company, and we know our obligations to provide good wages and benefits and their responsibilities that they have in terms of operating the equipment safely and all of those things that were brought up by the union and other people. We have an obligation under the National Labor Relations Act to recognize the union and to negotiate with the union, and we will do that responsibly. On the issue of the two-step process, frankly, we favor best value or the hybrid two-step. The whole industry has gone to best value simply because the qualitative issues, the quality of the staff that's proposed is a tremendous part of the decision. And for one company to be $1 below or $10 below and this much higher in the area of quality is not a best approach for the RTC. And with that, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any other feedback from industry review participants? And we're going to keep item 53 open And likewise, open item number 54. Ms.
And
Quigley?
Item number 54 is to approve or direct staff to make changes to the final solicitation documents for project number 12-081, fixed route transit service operations and maintenance.
See if we can capture the
Okay.
next
All
few
right,
minutes
let's
here.
walk through, okay.
The 10 items that we heard kind of consolidated the key issues. And if it's okay with the board, my sense is there's pretty much consensus on at least 6 or 7 of them. If we could identify those, and I think what staff has suggested we consider would be part of that direction. Councilwoman.
I think it might be wise for us in the areas where there isn't a lot of, where we haven't heard a lot of feedback from the providers as having concerns, that maybe we could, in one action, approve to follow staff recommendation on, say, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which is vehicle acquisition, service changes, rate adjustment 10%, liquidated damages, class 1 and 2 equipment, startup, transition, and price sheet detail. And then spend a little more time on the items that maybe there's going to be more discussion.
So as far as, Mr. Chair, as far as staff recommendation, you're referring to the board may wish to consider and those ideas listed in that area, correct?
And again, Councilman, that was,
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
okay, items 5 through 10 inclusive. And the board direction then would be to follow staff's consideration. And does the industry have copies of what staff had provided to the board in this document?
Yes, each one of the proponents was supplied with the exact same briefing document that we provided the board.
Okay. Well, we'll take that in the form of a motion, and before I ask for that vote, I would just give the industry an opportunity to comment on items 5 through 10.
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification, if maybe we could just quickly indicate what we're agreeing to on 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, because there, I think as the mayor said, there are some what were suggestions and not suggestions. So if we could just.
Okay.
And likewise, if we have this document.
Yeah, we'll bring it up on the presentation. We'll start with item number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Kemper.
So item number 5 was regarding the vehicle acquisition plan. And next slide, we suggested the board should consider adding opener language for possible negotiated rate adjustment if key elements of the plan are not met, and to add language to allow the RTC flexibility in the plan by tying the plan into a mileage/time frame range and budget cycle. This provided the proposers, it allows them to have to calculate for less risk by them having a stronger understanding as to what fleet they would be maintaining.
Item number 6.
Number 6 was the allowable service changes. We're suggesting the board consider to make 10% allowable service change cumulative over the base service hours, as in effect at award, to allow for rate adjustment if route reassignment exceeds 10% of the base allocated routes, and for possible negotiated rate adjustments if there is a significant change in fleet distribution during the term of the contract.
Commissioner G?
Thank you. Bless you. The 10% factor, I forgot to ask this, what was that tied to? I know the industry used that, but what was the basis for the 10%?
Service hours?
Yeah,
Is that the
okay, so it's
question?
just tied to that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, tied to the service hours. This allows that if we have changes that cumulatively they don't exceed 10%. Next item was, item 7 was liquidated damages. We thought the board could recognize that staff is reviewing the proposed liquidated damage schedule, and we will categorize and streamline for the final contract draft. The comment was that we had too many liquidated damages incorporated, and we recognize that, and we are streamlining and reducing the number of liquidated damages. Number 8 was regarding equipment, and this isn't necessarily fleet equipment. This is things like forklifts, et cetera. It was Class 1 and Class 2 equipment, definition and maintenance of responsibility. The staff is reviewing the current equipment list to make a final determination of what equipment falls into which class and what the RTC and the contractor responsibilities will be for each class, and will clarify the RFP and contract documents. We think this is a very fair and appreciated comment that we received from the industry. Number 9 was the startup transition plan. This, we thought the board could consider having us define more detail. More detail will be requested as part of the transition and startup plan. And again, this was feedback that was very much appreciated by the industry. They recognize the fact that splitting a contract like this is absolutely huge, and that it would behoove us to ask for more detail from the proposers on this aspect. Number 10 was the price sheet detail. The board may wish to consider eliminating price from step 1 in the 2-step procurement process, which we've talked about, and that price sheets to be revised to include more detail and formatted so each proponent can provide assumptions used to develop cost line by line. Again, appreciated comment from the industry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Question, under the current timeline, when would our final RFP be ready, under the current time frame?
Under the current timeline, where we were planning to start operations in April, the RFP, so we were going to come back to you in July with the final RFP document to issue July 10th.
Okay. So some of these, as far as indicating staff is going to streamline inventory, there's a comfort level that, at least under those 6 that we just looked at, that still keeps us within the current time frame.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Giunciliani?
Thank you. So July 10th, then we would back up for your timelines to tighten up, as the chair just asked, and then after July 10th, it's in the field, and then how long will it be in the field for?
Under the current timeline, it would issue July 10th, and proposers would submit their proposals on August 30th.
Okay, so about a 45-day is what you're looking at. Okay. Is that reasonable within the standard? Because you want to make sure, because this is complicated, we want to get it right. Okay.
Yes,
And
that
then
includes the question and answer, pre-proposal,
pre-proposal,
facility
so
tours.
you'll still have all of that part.
Addendums, yes.
Okay. And then we, as a board, would not, once it's in the field, we are not to be lobbied, contacted, or anything, correct? That's our policy.
Correct.
Okay. And then on the price sheets and the 2-step, that makes pretty good sense in my mind, because I think it really goes to what's common through the industry as far as the best value component. At some point, then, when we look at, when you separate your class 1 and 2s.
Equipment.
Yeah, that's equipment. And I noticed in the big document that you gave us, you have a list of equipment. So that may change and break out depending on what goes into what
comes out of it.
category.
Correct, as
And
we
then at
update it.
some point, I didn't notice in there, but I was trying to go back through, I didn't see any requirement for non-discrimination, transgender, any language in there, but maybe I missed it. So just let's make sure that we have that as part of our priorities. I did see about DBE, and DBE sometimes doesn't always include women-owned, so let's just make sure it's minority and women-owned and that we have that as an encouragement part. And let's see, the maintenance, which is very key. So we will make sure that our language is very tight with regard to maintaining our fleet, as far as that's concerned, correct? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I will take Councilwoman March's motion on items 5 through 10. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. If I may suggest on to items 2 and 3. items
Correct.
2 and 3 on this sheet.
Okay. Item number 2 was the Consumer Price Index calculation for option year compensation. We'd suggested that the board eliminate the CPI and have the proposers to price the option years. And the feedback that we had gotten that there would be less risk associated with smaller option year time periods. So this was the recommendation.
So certainly with Mr. Adams' comments, not unanimous from the industry,
sorry.
but consensus from the industry.
Correct. And I'm sorry, item number 2 was Consumer Price Index calculation. Item number 3 was the option year consideration, reducing the option year periods. These two were tied together in that forecasting CPI for a longer-based option year, we had heard was very difficult and included some risk for the proponents.
Well, again, let me restate that. Mr. Adams indicated that he had a differing opinion on
Correct.
eliminating CPI. So certainly industry review, not unanimous, but is it safe to say consensus from the industry was what staff is asking the board to consider?
Yes, and I'll
Is
have
that fair?
MJ Maynard address that.
Comments or questions on item 2? Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you. So when I go back to the original documentation, it looked like average length of option years was 4.74 years, and that we're now looking at a possible 4-year base with 2-year reopeners for 4 years.
Mhm.
Okay. Or option B, which was a 5-year base plus 2 plus 2 plus 1. So we would have to make a decision between those two as well.
No, Lot A was for one of the maintenance.
round.
Yeah,
Okay,
for one of the
gotcha.
maintenance bases, and Lot B was for the other.
Okay, and then explain to me an example of a proposers to price option years. So in other words, if we do the 4, they get the 42222. The 2222 are the option years, and they have to price accordingly to what they think those costs would be.
Correct.
But it would be required to be a CPI?
No, we're recommending that we leave the CPI recommendation. But the CPI had originally been included in the draft RFP. We're recommending after the consent, after the feedback that we got, that it be pulled out.
Okay, all right, that makes better sense, but
Okay.
I was confused.
Sorry.
So thank you for clarifying that part. And then, because of the risk, that they would be free to look at healthcare costs that might go up or hopefully go down if we have a national standard and some other things that come into play. But then, based on our price sheet, which we've already approved, we'll allow them to make assumptions on what that is, and so that would tie back to this component to some extent, because we would then be able to see what their rationale was for why they put a certain particular pricing in.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I would ask any of the participants, industry participants on items 2 or 3, are there any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mayor Tobler.
When you say to remove the CPI, that's if we shorten the option years though, correct? Which is item number 3.
Correct.
So we would be just tying the two together?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
Mr. Chairman, after careful review of all of these recommendations from staff, and after the work that they've done, I'm perfectly comfortable moving forward with all of these recommendations from staff. More significantly, I know we're not in number 4 yet, but I would like to reserve some comments on number 4 when we get to that, because I wanted to address some of the concerns that the ATU brought to my attention as well.
Thank you. Mayor Tobler, then, can I take that in the form of a motion that move to approve items 2 and 3? Okay. As staff has indicated the board consider in your motion. Motion on the floor, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now, for the audience information, there's a chance that the board will lose 2 of its members in and around 11 o'clock. And I certainly don't want to rush to the next 2 items. They're critically important.
Agreed.
But we'll deal with the time issue as it approaches.
Okay.
So let's move to item number 1.
Very good. Item number 1 was the basis of award. This is where we evaluated and talked with the industry about a best value RFP versus a two-step low bid RFP. Staff brings to the board to consider a two-step hybrid best value RFP with significant weight assigned to price. In our briefings with the board and in staff's review of the comments, this consideration would include a step 1, a technical proposal, which would be scored using weighted evaluation factors. The competitive range would consist of the proposers who scored at least 90% of step 1 evaluation score of the highest ranked proposer in their lot. So basically, anybody within the 90th percentile of the highest ranked proposer. Step 2 would be a combination of weighted price and technical criteria. For the board's consideration would be elements such as price, management team, innovation, past performance, and interview. In having our discussions internally and with the industry, possible weight ranges that could be assigned to each of these factors include price, a weight range of 50 to 70%. Management team, we'd suggest consideration of 15 to 25%. For innovation, consideration for 5 to 15% be given to that factor. For past performance, which includes things such as experience, performance indicators, and references, consideration of between 10 and 30% for that factor. And for the interview itself, possible weight ranges of between 5 and up to 25%. And these are possible weight ranges that we suggest and ask your consideration for.
Comments from the board. Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you. I kind of landed personally on option 2, which is the two-step hybrid best value RFP. In that it's what's common through the industry. It doesn't, it eases, I think, some of the concerns that either party up here had with the last round of what we dealt with. I am still concerned about the term significant weight assigned to price. Price is absolutely key, but if you don't have the other areas in place and done well, that will impact your price. And so the standard in the industry is 30%, and my comfort level would be to do that. So 30 to 40%, if that's some definition of significant. But personally, I just don't know that we go that much higher, because I think the key is making sure that there's safety, that our drivers are well paid, that there's maintenance is absolutely key, and then innovation and technology or new technologies, shared pricing ideas, those types of things ought to weigh in on this as well and I don't know if I heard you say that in the two-step. Technical innovations, and that would be part of that as well.
That would be innovation, yes, we suggest consideration between 5 and 15% be given to that.
So I'd just like to hear other thoughts, but I was concerned about the term significant weight, because then that starts moving us away what's common in the industry, and I don't want to open us up to having that kind of an argument again. So,
For clarification, Commissioner G, so the hybrid two-step process, on the first step, you would support a best value without pricing consideration. On the second step, you're indicating you'll support a pricing weight of 30 to 40%. Councilwoman March.
Thank you. I'm willing to consider the two-step hybrid best value RFP process as well, but I'm concerned that I think pricing must be a higher value. And we have finite resources. We're in a new economy in Southern Nevada, and we have finite resources. And as costs increase, services will need to be reduced. And we saw that in the last allocation and looking at how we were cutting bus lines, and we had residents here concerned. We had commissioners who were concerned that their residents were losing bus services. With that, with cost increase, we'll see vehicles taken out of services, which will be jobs lost by our employees, and we sure don't want to see that happen. And the public will experience further losses in services, routes will be reduced, and I think there'll be significant impacts to the public transportation system here in Southern Nevada, something that we're trying to grow, and will be severely impacted as a community. recently I was back in Cleveland for a transit conference, and clearly Southern Nevada and the RTC is held up to as an industry leader and as an example to others. And I think in many ways we're probably setting a standard for how the industry may be doing RFPs in the future. So I don't think that we should be bound necessarily by what has been practiced across the industry, but set a standard and a practice that is the future for the industry. So I think maybe closer to, I'm inclined, I know you said 30 to 40, but I'm inclined to start at 70 and look at where we can negotiate on that.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And again, a clarification
Yes.
on staff's recommendation, or staff's request for consideration.
Correct.
Did we get feedback on the 90%? If step one is the best value, those qualifying are 90% of the highest score.
Correct.
Was that
In the industry reviews? You want to address that,
consensus,
MJ?
if not total?
Mr. Chairman, that was consensus. We didn't hear anything that would say that we should do something differently.
Okay, so that would be a component of the step one best value, that 90% figure. Other comment, Mayor Tobler.
When we talk about the industry as far as the RFPs, and we talk about best value, does the industry just do a best value or a two-step?
The industry normally does that, well, for a best value, it's the traditional RFP that we
Right.
presented to you previously.
So I guess the compromise that I'm looking with some of the issues we had before is the first step, we're removing price. We're qualifying them based on a lot of those things, and we're holding them to those qualifications. So I think the second step, in my opinion, has to emphasize price because we removed it from the first one. And the industry standard, I believe, because it was just a one step, is probably why they weighted price lower, if that's really the industry standard. So I think because of some of the things that Councilwoman March talked about as far as, the issues we have with service hours, price has to be a big issue. Our commitment and emphasis should be on providing the service to our communities. So I think let's qualify them in the first step. Second step, let price be the major factor, and hopefully we can come to some compromise there. But I think the fact that we're splitting it up into a two-step is the compromise, at least removing it from the first step. I would prefer to see it up around 70 on price, and I think we could look at some of these other issues as factoring them in as well. But my concern, if we go with, I think innovation's important, but if you rate it too high and that never comes through, that their ideas never really pan out and really bring that benefit, you could have based your decision to give it to one company over another on things that you really can't quantify when you award the project. So that would be the dangers, I think, with putting in innovation too high, but you're also including that in your qualification, the first step, correct? You're not doing anything with innovation in the first step?
We're going to ask Lydia Belinsky to step up. She's been coordinating this and is intimately familiar with the details. So if you could address it.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, the question again?
Is innovation at all used in the first step to qualify them?
We don't have to include it in step one. I think we could focus step one on like the vehicle maintenance plan and the different plans that need to be submitted as well as minimum qualifications. Certainly if the board chose, we could put innovation in step one and just rate that as a technical score. One of the comments that staff discussed with regard to innovation was that let's keep it out of the price because it's not always something that is awarded right with the contract. It takes time to develop, but rather score it on a basis of having the submission include the proposed innovation, experience with a successful implementation of that innovation elsewhere, and any fiscal effects of that innovation that was implemented elsewhere, so it could be rated as a technical score to qualify.
But that isn't part of the first step then?
We can move it. It doesn't have to be part of step two. It could be part of step one.
The question is it part, currently, is innovation part of step one?
We haven't made that decision yet.
Okay, so we don't have
A final, what's in step one and what's in step two? No, we do not.
Thank you.
Because what you stated with past performance and what they've done in other areas, and I would say, I'd maybe prefer to somehow combine in step one, but if in step two, that should really be part of past performance instead of just its own technical rating, because that's where they can prove that they can move forward with that innovation. But I think, once again, the compromise has been that we're doing the two-step. Price wasn't part of the first one, but it should be a major factor in the second one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tobler. And on if the hybrid is where we're moving towards, we don't have a step one breakdown in percentages.
That's correct, not at this
Okay.
time. It's a little change from what we've had before.
Okay.
You had approved back in January what was originally in there, but if we're moving it into step one to step two, we could change those things around to make it so that it's more qualifications-based in the front, and then focus on the items that are important to the board in step two.
Great. Councilman Hafen.
Thank you. I agree with Councilman March and the mayor on the two-step. I do not have a problem with the best price approach. When we discussed this in December, we talked about the two-tier. If you qualified, then you're into the dance. I really don't have a problem with that. I think it makes it competitive. It makes it fair. But if we are going to go to the two-step hybrid, I would like to see innovation in the first step in the technical, in that 90% to qualify. Then we come down and we need to price needs to be weighted heavily. I would also like to say to the industry, last time we went through this process, you know, there was things that came up after the whistle blew. We sat there and watched the game, and then at the end of the game, boom, we didn't like the refs, we didn't like all the things that happen in a game. We've heard from you that it's been an open, transparent process, and I'm going to ask that, with all due respect, that when we make the decision of how we're going to proceed, that we're going to agree to that and let this process go forward. Thank you.
Councilman Hafen, I'm not going to let you get off that easily. I love the sports analogies, though. When you talk about price being heavily weighted, would you be comfortable with giving us an estimated percentage?
I'm saying 70 plus. I'd like to see it 80, but I'm a team player. You know, we're talking about sports here.
Thank you. Councilman Ross?
Again, Mr. Chairman and members of this board, I'm perfectly comfortable with what staff's recommendations are and concur with Councilwoman March and Councilman Hafen and Mayor Tobler. So I'm actually ready to move forward on this item.
And we're just about there, but I did want everybody to have the opportunity to weigh in, including the vice chair.
Did you want to go ahead?
I just had to clarify. Go ahead.
Yeah, I too have echoed the comments that have been made by my colleagues, and we're going through this all again. And the question I have, though, if we go the 70% route, is it 10 for technical, 10 for management, 5 for innovation, and 5 for interviews? Is that what's broke out on this?
The ranges that we had given for management team were 15 to 25, for innovation 5 to 15, for past performance, which was experience, performance indicators, and reference, 10 to 30, and for the interview 5 to 25.
I'm just going off what was in our backup.
Okay.
Yes, you could. Actually, that range is up for the board to consider, so certainly if it was 70%, you just kind of do the math, and if something's more important, 10% for the management experience and 10% for the management team.
So we could,
Correct.
okay, that's not your, if we went 70, that's not your concrete percentages on the other ones. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner G?
Thank you. So go look at option 2, hybrid best value RFP. What we're talking about is step 1, receive a technical score. They have to score 90% in order to even get to step 2, which is then the combined. weighted price and technical criteria. In that weighted price and technical criteria, what happens to the technical scores that qualified them in the first place? Does that reiterate itself, or does it become then a new technical scoring that comes into play?
Lydia will address that.
Yeah, you would only, the first score would just be for qualifying, and it wouldn't be considered in round two. Only the round two price and technical score and those factors there would be considered for the final ranking.
Okay. I would tend to agree that the innovation should be in the first part and maybe a lower, you have a range of 5 to 15, so I think you've got area to play there, which at least acknowledges that in order to have a better pricing structure, sometimes if we do business differently or they come up with some ideas on how to do business differently, that allows us to be able to have a cost savings. I do disagree that many of our route changes and cuts that were made last time had to do with the RFP. I think it had to do with our economic times and everything else that's there. So I still don't think the price should be as highly rated as all you all, but I am a team player, and if that's the way that the board chooses to go, I feel more comfortable. I don't like it. I'll be very honest. I don't like it, but I feel more comfortable because we're going at least with the two-step process. That gives me comfort, and it gives those of you that want it even higher. I just think 70% is like off the chart, but anyway, we'll see what happens.
Thank you. And to clarify, that step one is, to quote my colleague from Mesquite, you get the ticket to the dance punched, but then you're in the dance and the ticket goes away. Step two is something. Councilman Hafen.
I just want to make one more comment. We've talked about the standard and following the industry standard and a lot of standards. I would like to thank the industry. I think there's been some great help with the information that's been provided for staff. I would also like to thank the colleagues that are here, those that were predecessors. They have put the RTC at a higher level based on the decisions that they have made. That also includes those that drive and work for the RTC. They need to be commended as well. It's a team effort, and everybody has elevated the standard to be a standard-setting commission, if you will, because of the efforts of all. And so I didn't mean any offense previously, but everybody has helped in this process, and let's move this thing forward so we can take care of getting people where they need to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Ross?
Councilman Haven, thank you for saying that, because as I was looking at these numbers and these percentages and the whys and how comes, can we make this any more complicated? Can we, please? I say that because, we're a policy board, and Councilman Haven hit on the head. We're trying to do what's right for the RTC, what benefits Southern Nevada transportation users the most, all of us. And it's significant to point that out. But, as I look at this stuff and I look at the years out, some of us won't be here. You're the transportation professionals. If I'm the transportation professional, I need to be sitting there. We're sitting up here. And these recommendations, you've done a great job bringing them to us. The industry's worked with you. Councilman Haven's right on the money. Transparent as can possibly be. ATU's been involved with their comments. I mean, how better can this get? How more complicated can it get as well? But I think from our perspective, or certainly from my perspective as a member on this board, you guys are doing a great job. These are great recommendations. I'm with the councilman on the end. Let's get this thing on. Let's get it on the streets, and let's put people in buses.
I just wanted to clarify, the question came up regarding the step one. The current items that would be evaluated as part of step one that's in the current RFP and of course would carry over to the hybrid RFP is currently we have management structure and key personnel, experience and references, which we could move to step two, transition and startup plan, staffing and personnel plan, field service supervision and operations management plan, employee training program, vehicle maintenance plan, equipment maintenance plan, safety, security, and emergency management program, communication system and dispatching plan. So really you're looking at those factors in a hybrid RFP as the qualification with management, actual proposed management move to step two, or whichever the board would choose. Just wanted to clarify. So it's pretty thorough.
We would,
Innovation would go to, well, either step 1 or step 2. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, are we ready for a
I'm
motion?
hearing murmuring, but we have to put it onto the record. I'm going to indicate that what I'm hearing and what I heard was innovation should be placed in step 1 of the hybrid.
Understood.
Did I hear you say that management team was already in step 1?
Yes, it's currently already in step 1.
So are we also?
But it could
gonna
go
consider
actually in
that?
both. You could use different descriptions for step 1, maybe, you know, setting minimums or things like that. And the step 2 would actually be evaluating the proposed management team.
Okay, thank you.
There's some options.
To consolidate everything that's been said, we're looking at step 1 being best value, no pricing, and those firms that would qualify in step 1 would be 90% of the highest rated firm.
Correct, yeah. And we'll
As
put
we-
Exactly, emphasis on that 90% of the highest rated firm,
Correct.
as opposed to just flat 90%.
And the step 2 would have pricing at 70%, management team, past performance, and interview then would make up the 30%.
Correct?
I think, as Councilman Ross indicated, we would let staff decide on how to best break up that 30%.
Well,
For fear that you will walk away from today's meeting with nothing to do.
very good.
So that, and that would be the step 2.
Mr. Chairman, is 50, since 53 is still open, can we comment on that or not?
Please.
All right, just quickly. The 90%, what the concern is that what we're doing is essentially most will make the dance. It's may or may not be the case, but most will make that dance. And so when it's that high, when it's 70%, you really are taking it away from the best value and you are making it a price. So you run the risk that somebody who's lower on the end, who makes the dance, the low price gets them in. Now, if that's what the board wants to do, that's obviously fine, but there was a reason staff said 50 to 70 at the most, because staff recognizes that, I believe, as well, that you want to keep that number so that staff has some flexibility in saying this is the best value. Otherwise, I think we're back at the low bid process. So, thank you.
Appreciate the comment, and I think that was discussed, at least in my briefing with staff, as a scenario. If the lowest rated firm in step 1 that just gets 90% on the nose comes in and wins step 2 because they're $5,000 less than the highest rated firm, that's a scenario. The flip side of that coin, which also came up in briefing, is the scenario is if we are true to step 1 on a best value, we could very well get 3 or 4 firms that are capable of doing 1 or 2 of the lot, either lot, and then putting them into the price. The public interest is best served because we know 4 firms are able to do it, and that price will give us a lot more options. So appreciate what you said, Mr. Kempfer. I think that's been some of the dialogue, and we're never going to get to an absolute agreement on that, but points taken. Any other comments? Now, so everybody understands,
Okay.
bring that back because we still have a third piece of this first issue to go over, but let's review
What we've got.
best value and the step 2.
Best value, so we are working towards a hybrid. We will have a step 1 with elements that Lydia has outlined in the previous RFP. Our step 2, the direction so far will be weighted factors of price with 70%, and then the other factors, management team, past performance, and interview. Staff will get back to you. I have had a just informal briefing with MJ. I think we are comfortable actually recommending management team 15%, past performance 10%, and interview 5% for the remaining 30%.
And the third bullet under the first issue of basis of award indicates a decision whether one firm can be awarded both contracts if it is in the best interest of the RTC and the community versus certainly an indication or an understanding by some of the applicants that there's a clear intent to have two firms, two separate firms running this contract. I think the board needs to flesh that out. Councilwoman March.
Okay. I went back and reviewed the minutes of the December 8th meeting, and it was at that meeting that there was a settlement agreement agreed upon between First Transit and the RTC to split the contract, and much of the discussion had to do with avoiding a monopoly. And to me, if that was the intent in the discussion, that then we are trying to find two contractors, to do this work. So I think that also it talked about the need to reprocure and that not one firm would be awarded both contracts. I think that discussion actually did come out in the meeting. Competition in the marketplace will benefit the communities, the drivers, and the mechanics. I think we will all benefit by having some competition in the marketplace here. That doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable. I know I sit on the the economic development effort right now, and there's a lot of churning, and I think that with any change and with anything that's going on that ends up being a good thing for our community, there's a lot of churning before there's the solid relationship and then moving forward with a really successful program. And I think that that's the case here as well, that this is an uncomfortable time, but I think in the end it will be good for all of us. We just don't know what the outcome looks like today.
Councilman Ross, are you allowing staff to recommend your position?
Well, in an attempt not to micromanage the RTC, yes, I am, as a matter of fact. If there are commitments made about splitting the system, we need to fulfill those commitments. If there's from what I'm understanding, there's an opportunity or a chance that one firm could be recognized as successful on both. I'm not sure if there's some legal issues there that we need to be paying attention to so we don't get ourselves in a courtroom again. But again, Mr. Chairman and members of this board, staff has been diligent at trying to bring this back to us in the best possible way, shape, or form. I am certainly not going to diminish their capacity in making those recommendations to us, and I'm going to stand by staff's recommendations.
Mr.
Mayor
Catlin?
Tobler.
What was staff's recommendation on this?
I'm going to have Zev address the legal question that Councilman Ross asked.
Yeah, I went back and reviewed the record. The actual settlement agreement itself specifies that the commission agreed to split the service. It did not specifically address in the settlement agreement itself whether or not there'd be one firm or two. There was discussion in a subsequent item, and there was discussions in the settlement process of what the implied intent was, and that was to go to two different contractors, but that's not expressly stated in the settlement agreement. And I believe it's the understanding in First Transit's position that they believe that was the intent and it was implied, and the subsequent conversations by the board and their policy would seem to support that position. It may open us up to a legal challenge, and I don't know that we want to go that route and delay this again. And so your previous policy was to split it and have two different contractors. So I just leave you with that.
So, and that's fine. I think this is the decision we'll make today. I think we're on solid ground making a board policy decision. So, Mayor Tobler.
Well, no, I know what was in the contract or the settlement agreement, and I think we ought to go with what we stated in the minutes back in that meeting, and that was two separate contractors. And I think after reading through that, I think both Councilman Ross and Elison were the ones that brought that forward, and no one, once that was given back to us and as an answer, no one really contested that. And I would think, our words should mean something, and that's what we stated in there. So I would hope that we would make sure that it gets to two different contractors.
Councilman Hafen?
I agree. There was a spirit of the agreement, and I think it was that there will be two separate providers. I think we need to honor that. And we may, if we do that, have no legal challenges, and we might be providing services.
Commissioner G.
Thank you. I know Lois and I raised the issue along with many folks about the monopolization. I know you're absolutely correct. We implied that it would be two separate. We never really stated that. And I think today we need to make that clear. I have a further question, though. What if we have 7 companies, let's just pull. What if 2 of them want to partner up as well as put in on one? Would that be permitted? In my mind, it would, because that's another creative way to take a look at who might have different strengths or weaknesses to work towards. And that's different than splitting it, but I think it needs to be clarified.
That's the board's discretion.
Okay.
If you want the RFP to specify that you welcome joint proposals, I think that's permissible, and they could be considered separate from an individual proposal as a separate proposer.
Okay. And I just throw that out because there may be, that's what we're trying to do, is get better competition, a better way of thinking how to deliver a service. They could apply it in one route and then maybe apply in that same route with a partner. They could, as long as that's clear for staff, I would say that that should be recommended, but I do believe we should wind up with 2 separate groups.
Mr. Chair?
Mayor Tobler.
You know, we're getting back to the monopoly issue. If we were to allow that and then those companies were to merge down the road, then you're back to one operator. And if you look at the minutes in that same meeting, that question was discussed as well. And in that meeting, we talked about how if one operator, if 2 of them were to combine, they would be eliminated from that second contract, I believe, if I read the minutes correct. I guess my concern is I understand that it could open up some, I don't know, some savings there or some creative ways of managing the contract, but we could also be placing ourselves back in there if there's a merge, which does happen, I believe, frequently in this industry. You can get back to just one operator with both contracts again. So those would just be some concerns.
If I might clarify then, when a merger occurs, I know that when we sometimes as the commission, if a merger occurs with some of our franchisees and such, they have to come back to the board for permission to accept that. Legally, what is our requirement on something along those lines?
We're required that they notify us, and I'd have to check. I believe it requires commission approval, but certainly requires notification. The other way to deal with that is if there is a merger, you can still require that they operate as 2 independent contracts with 2 separate management teams, even if for some, and then when the option period comes up, then you have the freedom to re-procure if you don't like that situation. So there's alternatives.
Yeah,
as to how it
take a
can be
look at
dealt
that,
with.
because I think we should have more than just notification, personally, in any of our types of, not just RTCs. And so let's kick that around. I have no idea, but I think we should look at any options that might come in and be pretty clear about what we think.
Commissioner, just for clarification, the draft RFP, as it was written previously, and it will be revised, but that provision can remain, did require approval.
Mr. Vice Chair?
This is very interesting because as the record reflects the discussion of this and my concerns of this very issue and and it's all coming to light and I don't know how to resolve it when you start merging all the other things, but it's going to be some discussion I guess we're going to have. I don't know what else to say because it was been brought up and it was a concern back then and it's continuing to be a concern.
I think the consensus is that we should have 2 firms. That's what certainly I'm hearing. 2 questions on that. If a firm, Zev, if a firm was to be low or the winning
Number one
proposal
ranked firm.
on Lot A and Lot B, who has the discretion to say we're going, then would go look at the second place finishes on both lots? Is that up to the RTC to determine
Yes.
which lot?
Yes, and the way, that was our intent under the previous iteration of the draft RFP, when it was just price even. We said, since the direction was to not award to the same firm, we had a methodology where the board has the discretion to decide by looking at them both and figuring out what is in the best overall interest of the RTC, and you would direct who gets which contract.
But is that based on a discretionary board decision, or is that based on a price differential of?
Well, at that time, it was a formula to the one with the second lowest final price proposal for that lot. But you looked at the overall pricing. So when you looked at the pricing for A and B, it was your discretion to pick what's the overall lowest price. Now, that could be modified, obviously, because it's not purely price anymore. So we'd have to come up with something that says the number one ranked proposer and number one ranked proposer are the same. Now, how do you pick which number one and which number two? That's going to have to be something discretionary with the board. Yeah, but that time it was just based on price, so it's going to have to be different this time based on the scoring.
At that time, does that mean the current draft RFP that's out there?
Yes, yes.
Did the industry comment on that at all?
I don't
Not on that
believe
formula,
so.
no.
Not on that formula.
We'll just address that one.
But that brings up another issue. The current schedule is, I know you're giving all the direction today, or may end up giving it. We still have one other major issue to deal with, but it was scheduled to go out on July 10th. Your next regular board meeting is July 12th. Does this commission want to see the final version and approve it at your July 12th meeting before it's issued? So it'd be a delay of just a couple days, but I don't know if that's something the board would prefer. So if there is some minor issue still, something like this, and you haven't seen it yet, it will give you the opportunity to see it and give one final direction.
They can't.
Okay.
Not to further
I'm sorry.
complicate things.
So, yeah, the schedule as we're looking at it right now, in working backwards and trying to get to our goal of being operational by April 7th of next year, we needed to issue the RFP by July 10th of this year, which, if that is correct, is 2 days prior to your board meeting.
Councilman Hafen, shed some light on this.
He's going to go to a dance.
No, I want to get it over with and decide where we're going. I know there was some concern last time that we hadn't all touched, smelt, felt, kissed, whatever, blessed the final RFP. We've talked about micromanaging staff. We've given them direction. I assume that we're going to hopefully complete the last hurdle. I would like to make sure that we're all comfortable if we let them award this on the 10th, that we come back on the 12th, and I don't want to hear anybody say.
Well, it would go out on the 10th.
So I want concurrence from all of us here that we're fine that staff's capable and competent to go ahead and issue it on the 10th, and on the 12th, I don't want to sit here for 4 hours and listen to all the complaints. So I want that on the record and clear. I'm fine with staff. I think they're fully competent to handle that. I think they've been given the direction they need to have, and let's roll this thing out.
Let me just throw out a thought, is if staff has a questionable issue, bring that on the 12th, but
Yeah, in talking with Lydia, I think she's going to work on the schedule so that we can bring it back to you in July 10th. If there are any issues at that point, then we can address them.
Yeah, I did some little calculations, and if the board would like to see the final document at the July 12th meeting, being that the bulk of the decisions have been made today, we can start working on those changes, bring back anything else to the board that the board needs to decide on, and maybe just issue a few days later after the board meeting, within a week or two, and still make our time frame by just shortening up some evaluation times internally and other times since we vetted a lot of questions up front.
Councilwoman.
Yeah, I'm actually comfortable that we have a very competent RTC. In fact, one of the leading RTC regional transportation commissions in the country. And I'm comfortable that many of these things can be worked out by our staff. And I'd be comfortable with letting it go out before we meet the next time, knowing that if there's some minor issues, I mean, we've really pretty much defined the big issues, I think, or will have.
And if there are any changes after the board, July 12th board meeting, they can always be incorporated into the RFP document via addendum.
And Councilman Hafen could always call a special meeting if staff is in critical need of our support. I think you have consensus.
Don't plan on that meeting.
Number, I'm sorry, Commissioner Giunciliani and then Councilman Ross.
Thank you. I think as we're hashing through this today, I'm pretty comfortable, but I do think we should give staff the allowance that if something comes up, then you put it on a post and you put it on the agenda. I think that that's kind of what we're saying. But I have to say, if I read a document and I have questions, I don't consider that something that I'm complaining about. I consider that doing my job. And so, with no disrespect, I don't want to, that's not what this is about. This is highly contentious. We put that aside. We're trying to do the best job now. But I feel, I used to come to these meetings long before any of you even got on, and Larry can attest to that. Sometimes it was like, oh, why am I here? It's 15 minutes, I should be out of here. And that's not how we do business anymore. And that's part of what we've tried to change in this format. So I commend this entire board for its due diligence. You're absolutely correct about the industry. They finally, I think this time, by stepping up and giving us good guidance, we didn't have to accept it all, and that's fine, but I do believe that everybody felt that they were listened to. And that is a huge difference, because when you listen and dismiss, that's one way. Listening and considering makes a big difference. And I think that's where we're at today, and while we're going to have consensus, I think, throughout all this. So, Mr. Chair, if you're ready, I would at least try a motion on item 1. I would move that we do option 2, two-step hybrid best value RFP. Step 1 with the technical scores. You would include the innovation then, but at a smaller percentage. You'll figure out that part. Step 2, then, once they get to the dance, then we would look at a weighted price and technical criteria. All right, I'm going to say 70%. Be careful what you ask for, but anyway. I would then also clarify for the record that we intend 2 companies to qualify, but if one wants to join up, that we would allow that, but that would have to come back as approval if it became a monopoly issue, and then that would give us the authority on their next option to make a change if that's what we wanted to as a board. Did I capture that? So that would be my motion, Mr. Chair. Yes, I said.
We all heard that.
7-0.
So, and then
I'm signing it.
clarify for management team being 15, past performance 10, and interview 5. Okay.
Price not included in step 1.
Correct.
Very good. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, I know.
And perhaps the most important one, I think. Councilman Ross, and I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't
It had
acknowledge.
nothing to do with the motion. It had nothing to do with, it actually had to do with Zev and the dates. We have been successful in making this more complicated than it started out to be this morning. So I just want to point that out. Good job, staff.
Issue number 4.
Issue number 4 was the labor transition and average wage discussion. The industry input, they had requested average wage be used for bidding purposes with the opportunity to readjust the contract service rates once the collective bargaining agreement and staffing roster was finalized. After significant internal discussion, we would ask the board to consider the preference in hiring approach, which is what we have traditionally used, providing the current collective bargaining agreement and seniority list to the proposers in the RFP, and that would allow the proposers to calculate and model estimated wages based on this assumption. This is a standard, what firms do if there's no state obligation to maintain wages. Proposers model their own scenarios based on the current CBA and seniority roster. A split contract should not affect an experienced bidder. That was our opinion. Accurate information on the current CBA and seniority roster should eliminate any potential risk or concern for experienced bidders, according to the industry, at least a few of the industry participants that we heard from. Now, since then, I know there's been significant conversation, so I open it up to the board for discussion.
Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got some concerns about this. I think you have one proposer that is currently in a collective bargaining agreement with the ATU, and you have the other proposers who want to be in a collective bargaining agreement with the ATU, I would assume. I don't see a level playing field here. So I'm concerned about how these numbers are going to come rolling in when it comes to the costs of the collective bargaining agreement. And that's a big concern of mine. It has to be a level playing field. And Ms. Quigley, if you can get us there, that would be great. There were some comments made by a couple of your members about union breaking. And I want to assure you that our discussions as an RTC, from my perspective, has never been about breaking the union. Employees, if they've felt like pawns, I feel bad for that because that's not what we're trying to do. I don't believe that First Transit or Veolia has tried to do that either. You're certainly not. You are the asset that we're talking about. You are the employees. You're the front line that talk to our customers every single day. You're the ones out there fixing those buses. We need you. And everyone recognizes that the success of any organization or any company or corporation is its employees. And I think we recognize that as a board. If this was any attempt to break the union, I would probably be sitting out there with you. And I just want to assure you that's not the case. We are trying to do the very best we can with the tools we have in our toolbox for the benefit of the Regional Transportation Commission. That's our goal here. And we're getting there, slowly but surely. And I just want to make the members of the ATU comfortable with that thought. But, Ms. Quigley, at the same time, to you as staff,
Yes.
this has got to be apples to apples. That's been my concern since we went through this fiasco last time. Everybody's on the same page, and Councilman Haven kind of hit it on the head. Transparent, everyone's talking to each other. Love Commissioner June Kiliani's thoughts about merging and all that, but got to talk about it, got to communicate. That's the idea here. We're going to get to the dance, Councilman. We're going to get there. But let's make sure everybody gets there in the right direction. That's my concern.
As we did our briefings with the board, this item was certainly the one that generated the most discussion and had the most concern for. So I think your comments are probably understood by other board members as well.
Commissioner June Kiliani, then Councilwoman March.
Thank you. I would echo Councilman Ross, and to the employees, you don't have anybody up here that doesn't support the collective bargaining agreements and arrangements and your rights. I would, unfortunately, we're not California in this case. Sometimes don't always want to say that, but they do have definite requirements in state law for how they have to treat their collective bargaining. We unfortunately don't have that. But I think we should get as close to what we can language-wise to assure the protection for the employees. So tell me what a preference in hiring really means.
Okay, I'm going to have Lydia address that.
Preference in hiring is really what we're currently doing and what we've done in every other RFP. It requires the contractors to provide a preference in hiring to the existing workforce. It's good for the RTC, and then again, that it's consistent with past practice, but it also has minimal RTC involvement in employment issues consistent with private sector hiring standards.
So it's very, very traditional in its approach. What's untraditional about us is that we're taking an existing labor force and we're splitting it into two. And the proposers don't know which type of labor will be assigned, which type of labor they should be bidding on. That's the feedback and comment that we've heard from those that are concerned with this recommendation and from other members of the board.
And so how do we address those concerns? Because is it by providing the CBA all the costs associated to it based on health care, wages, safety, training, lack of bathroom breaks and layovers? And do we, that then is given to everybody so that they know point by point. So if they want to increase health insurance or they want to do something else, that's part of what they come up with in their plan. Now, I would expect that part of the transition that they're scored on, their transition plan, should also include how they're going to treat the employees. So we don't know. I mean, ATU is the representative, and those folks are here today. I can see that they're concerned because if another company is picked, they could very well be, their members could be negotiating with somebody else if that's the way the membership rules. We can't weigh in on that part of it, though. The main thing I think that we have to deal with as a board right now is to make sure that that collective bargaining agreement is respected and complied with, at least as a standard. And so I don't know how we get there without, I would hope that we would be clearer that, because I'm looking at our list that we had, and in one place in Minnesota, they do a minimum the contractor has to honor and incorporate existing labor agreements in regards. So they kind of set a floor. And I don't know if we're permitted to do that or not. But we want to make sure, remember, because a lot of the discussion was on health care and safety training and wages, and our folks still aren't paid very well. So, I mean, you know, that's a whole nother factor that's there. So I'm not sure where to go on this one. I don't know if you just set aside and say you'll just honor it, you'll hire the people and don't even cost it out, or do you give everybody all the numbers and make sure that that's what they compute within their program while recognizing that they have to have a hiring preference for the employees, but that doesn't address the issue of the CBA, I guess, in the long run.
Councilwoman?
Yes, we certainly don't want a bait and switch situation, and I think that Veolia actually has set the floor. I think the floor is set, and we're dealing with 2 long contracts, and we need to create a process that's fair for everyone concerned, and I'd like to believe in the end, and I believe it's the intention of this commission, that there will be a demand for the trained workforce that drives the buses or maintains the buses, so that they actually will be in demand by all of the companies or the 2 companies that would be involved, and that they would have job security. But that I do believe that the floor has been set by Veolia and the contract that's in place.
Councilman?
I just have when does the current CBA expire?
Current CBA expires June 30th of next year, I believe.
And this RFP goes into effect?
This RFP goes into effect April 7th of next year. So we have just a couple months separation.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to what happens if they're negotiating to extend their contract?
So I'm going to ask Kent Woodman with Thompson Coburn, who is our legal expert on transit labor issues, to address the legal issues associated with that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Is the question the preference in hiring or the collective bargaining agreement? There really are 2 separate.
This one's collective bargaining.
The CBA.
The current CBA, as I understand it, lasts a couple of months after the revenue startup date of the new contractor. So in the absence of some legal requirement to carry over the CBA, the normal practice in the industry, and maybe some of the industry people would want to speak to this, is that the prospective bidders gather all the information. They have the wages and benefits, they have the seniority rosters, and they price accordingly, because they know they're going to have to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement with the existing union. We give them a preference in hiring, and the preference in hiring, having gone through several transitions in other cities, the preference in hiring means that the existing workforce, because they're the experienced workers anyway, they get the jobs. If the new person coming in hires more than 50% of the existing workforce, they have to recognize the union. They have to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement with the union. At least what I have seen is that collective bargaining agreement is usually done during the transition period, and even sometimes before the end of the transition period. Again, maybe some of the industry people would want to speak to this. I don't see in other communities radical changes in the terms and conditions. I think, as you said, as a new person coming in, you see what the existing terms are and you realize that's really what you have to deal with. You may negotiate around the edges, you may negotiate some work rules, you may do that kind of thing, but there's really not any pattern of people coming in and slashing away wages or not having a health program or anything like that, because there are kind of industry standards and all of those things. What you can do basically is, I think there are legal issues with you requiring a collective bargaining carryover because you'd be imposing it on a contractor that didn't negotiate it. And basically under the National Labor Relations Act, you can't do that. We could make it clear that an incoming contractor has to have a health plan, has to have a retirement plan, has to have a disciplinary procedure, has to allow for grievances. We could put that kind of language in the RFP. But again, it's been my experience that happens. So if we want to put some standards in and some minimums that have to be in a collective bargaining agreement, we can do that. But beyond that, I'm not sure you have the legal authority to impose terms on a new contractor.
From a practical standpoint, and this was part of the question, so we are in the transition phase. We have chosen two firms. Those two firms are negotiating in good faith with ATU. And are they separate? So ATU could be having two different contracts with two different firms? And is it the board's or the RFP's responsibility to call out? You mentioned preference in hiring, but how they choose employees. If I think one of the applicants or one of the potential proposers indicated that they didn't think this was as big of an issue as the board was making it, because if we provide the current CBA seniority list, they'll calculate and base it on the assumptions as staff has indicated. It is what it is, was the quote that they indicated. They know what the current CBA is. That's what they're going to base their RFP on. They think if a mechanic or a driver lives on the north end of town or the south end of town, they're going to want to go to that firm that's operating out of the respective ones. So location, things of that nature come into play. And they indicated the less we try to impose something, the more the natural market will take place. I guess from a legal standpoint, where do we start and where do we stop in this RFP?
Well again, Mr. Chairman, I think the most you could do would be to put in some basic requirements that certain elements be in the collective bargaining agreement. I don't think you can go much further than that. The only other thing that we had talked about, which is really not something you would do in the RFP, but just as an idea, it would be possible, since the unions are familiar with engaging in system-wide picks, where they select what their routes are going to be and they select what facility they're going to work in. If there was some way to have the union participate during this RFP process in a system-wide pick, so they would have some kind of predetermination of whether they're going to be in the Lot A group or the Lot B group, then there'd be more information to proposers, because then they would actually know wages for their package, benefits for their package, and seniority for their package. Now, that's not anything you'd really do in the RFP. That's something that, that would be done kind of informally through the labor organization. But it would also have the benefit of giving some certainty to the employees, as saying, I know that I like working in this garage. It's close to my house, so I'm going to bid on Lot A or Lot B or whatever. But it wouldn't, again, it'd be informal. It wouldn't be anything I think you could bind anyone to, but it gives you more of a snapshot of what the workforce would look like.
If you would stay there for a moment, please.
Yes, Tim Collins with VLA Transportation. I'm just affirming that the existing labor agreement does expire on June 30th of 2013. And we, of course, as a vendor, will be required to abide by that contract. And the floor, as Ms. Councilwoman March has indicated, will be the floor that we will have to base our proposal on, certainly for the period going forward, because we'll be compelled by the existing agreement through the end of June. It is in all likelihood that we would commence or start negotiations with the union sometime before April of next year on that basis. And I simply point out that because it is going to set a floor for our situation in bidding a project that ultimately winds up with 70% of the value on price, it would be our hope and expectation that the other vendors would have to come well in line with what the terms and conditions of the current collective bargaining agreement are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
I'm going to try to tiptoe around this as gently as I can. But does that, being the system's being split, they have to honor, say Veolia has to honor half of that system till, and I'm just using Veolia because that's the current one, but the new contractor that got picked for the other half of that system, they have to honor the ATU's contract till June 3rd, but they could be negotiating with a different union, possibly?
No, it's unlikely it would be a different union, because if they hire 50% of their workforce from the existing employees, then there's a requirement under the National Labor Relations Act, they have to recognize the ATU. So for all practical purposes, that will happen, in my view. So on both contracts, the ATU will be recognized. How the ATU divides itself, whether that's they become an A and a B bargaining unit or what they do, is kind of up to them.
But the new contractor would not be bound by, assuming, taking your assumption that Veolia wins one of the contracts and there's a new contractor, they would be negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement.
Because we're going to get a new contractor, because we're splitting the system, so we're guaranteed a new contractor.
Correct. And that new contractor is not bound by the existing collective bargaining agreement. As Kent indicated, they may most likely be bound by the requirement that they negotiate with and recognize ATU, but they'd be negotiating a brand-new collective bargaining agreement. And you're going to be making the selections of who these contractors are, I believe, in December or January at the latest, and there'd be, so you have that transition period, and was indicated in all likelihood, Kent said ordinarily, those negotiations start right away. Once they know they're going to have the contract to provide the service, they're going to be sitting down with the collective bargaining unit and starting their negotiation, so that most of these contractors, I mean, they all have union contracts all over the country, all over the world. They're used to that. They're going to want to have that contract in place so they don't have any disruption in service at the time of the startup.
One other thing on the level playing field idea that would be possible, because I don't know that this would hurt us too much time-wise, is we could structure things so that the actual revenue operations date of the new contractor is June instead of April, and therefore that 2-month overhang in the Veolia labor contract doesn't create a problem.
Actually, it's July 1st.
Yeah. I mean, you could do that, because right now you do have this 2-month overhang, and at that point you're putting everyone more on an equal footing, because they all on revenue operations date would have, Veolia would have a newly negotiated contract. The other folks would have their new contract with the ATU.
So what you're basically saying, that whoever the second contractor becomes has to honor the current contract until June 30th.
Actually, what we're saying is that he's mentioning we consider delaying the the operational start date to coincide with the expiration of the existing CBA in order to give a level playing field.
And I think that's pretty easy to do in the schedule, because we can either provide a little more time for people to submit proposals, or we could have a longer transition period, and that way we dovetail those dates. And you don't have any overhang. I think it might be a good idea.
Mr. Kempfer.
Yes, actually, that's probably a pretty good idea, because respectfully, if we're trying to get this so that we're not arguing, the fact that you put in a contract that somebody has to agree to wages and benefits and mealtime, whatever it might be, without indicating what those benefits are or how much they have to pay for those benefits, those all reflect on cost, obviously. And so it seems like that suggestion there is probably the only way to kind of level the playing field, so that we all know that come July 1st, we're all doing the same negotiations with the ATU. And so anyway, that would seem to be the only way that we could probably address it. So.
Well, just in negotiations with a union per se, not guaranteed ATU or Teamsters or POA or SPA or?
Correct. That's, well, as Kent indicated, if they hire at least 50% of the existing workforce, then ATU under the law is the representative unit, union. If for some reason one of the contractors didn't hire 50%, then it's up to the employees who their representation would be. It's not for us to dictate that.
Thank you.
But that's not likely. In all likelihood, they're going to be hiring, 50%.
Mr. Mendoza?
Yes, Mr. Brown. This is the reason why we've been here all these months, because of what's happening here. How can one contractor from Yard A offer, say, perhaps $21 an hour to an operator, and then the other contractor on Yard B offer $16 an hour to the operator? This is what we don't want. And however you guys are going to put it in the RFP, which is going to represent the bargaining unit. Right now, as it stands, we're almost at 600 strong. If those contractors you select and they refuse to negotiate in good faith, the members, and I am sure and confident that they will not move those buses. We don't want that. So we hope that something gets resolved. And that's why we've been here every month, because the way it's going to be split, it's going to be hard on us, it's going to be hard on your decision, and it's going to be hard on the ridership. And the ones that are going to be hurting are the riders, because they have to get to work. So please consider the whole picture in this labor management contract negotiations, because it will have an impact on the citizens of Las Vegas who use public transit. Thank you.
And Mr. Mendoza, I would ask you, certainly representing the bargaining unit, to be part of the next couple weeks. If there are suggestions that you feel would be equitable and protect your rights, please contact us. I think the desire to not split the contract, literally that bus has left the station. So I think we're past that, but we absolutely want to make this as fair and equitable to your employees and your union as we possibly can, and protect both you, the proposers, and the RTC as far as legal challenges. We want this to be as smooth a transition as we could hope for, but be an active participant.
Oh, we have been. That's why we've been here every month. And again, like I said, it's really, who is it going to impact? It's going to impact the riders, if whatever you guys decide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Tom Geraci, business agent for Teamsters 631. We also have a claim in some of this. This is going to affect us some, too. We have members that are with TransUnion, or Transient. And we need to take in consideration, we have members also that's going to be involved in this. And we'd like to stake claim on on all of our fixed routes. Thank you.
Okay, is this paratransit?
This discussion is strictly fixed route today.
Okay, but, all right. Other comments? Commissioner June Kiliani.
All right. With what you said, that we could clarify that the contract at a minimum would have to, in transition, cover insurance, retirement, grievance, wages, and I didn't get everything written down, to give assurance that it needs to be made up of an embodiment of that, and the understanding, based on their drug tests and whatever, but that they would have a hiring preference for the current employees, and that we would extend the bidding time, or actually the selection time, to the July 1st, or June 30th? Startup.
Start of operation
startup
July 1st
to
next year.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to think of what other notes I made. Provide the bargaining agreement, its related costs, and seniority list to all the companies that are bidding, so that everybody has the same information for them to be able to do the cost projections.
Correct.
Okay. You want me to try a motion then?
Comfortable legal?
Is that would be my motion. Don't ask me to restate it.
We captured that?
Did we capture that? Oh, I'll capture that. So the recommendation is that we delay the operational date of the contracts to coincide with the expiration of the existing CBA agreement, so having a startup operation date of July 1st, 2013. We will have preference in hiring, which means that we will provide the list of existing, let's see, I need my verbiage. Existing wages and benefits, and what else am I missing?
Seniority roster.
And seniority roster to each one of the proposers.
I guess the question would be, how much, or what are you adding to what is on the screen for us, other than the
Actually,
startup
the only
date?
thing we're hiring onto the screen is we are revising the operational start date to be July 1st of next year.
And we're also adding the items that need to be addressed in the collective bargaining agreement without specifying amounts.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So yes, we had seniority, comparable life, health benefits, okay. Yes, grievance, holidays, potty breaks, yes, which,
That is in the form of a motion. Does the industry want to say anything or comment at this time? Okay, there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
okay. I just want to say, I am proud and thrilled, and I admire each of you. This was a lot of work. I know it's been a lot of your time, and I appreciate the patience that you've had with all of us in our extended briefings and our constant search for thoughts and opinions from you, in supporting us throughout this. And these were really hard decisions, and I am so thrilled that you did it in one meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you. I do hope, though, that part of the understanding was the concept of involving the folks so that the employees could at least look at a selection process is an informal place, that would be part of our understanding. And I know it's a scary time, but I think we can all work this out. I think today is indicative of the hard work from the industry. Thank you very much to our staff, overwhelming to this board and to the employees that are in the audience. We do appreciate you. Thank you.
Just one announcement, there's a dance in Mesquite at 9 o'clock on Friday.
And it's sponsored by the co-chair.
Oh, shoot, that's right. Oh, damn it. All right.
Item number 51.
That brings us to item number 51. This is item to approve the regional complete streets study and adopt the complete streets policy for inclusion in the appendix to the policy and procedures. And we have Martin James, our Director of Planning, to present this.
Mr. Chairman, I will try not to take too much of your time, and it's been a very interesting and instructive listening into the discussion. The Complete Streets initiative that you have before you today has been the culmination of about 18 months of work by staff and consultants. And one of the things that we aim to do in the Complete Streets study is to set out guidelines for retrofitting and developing new roadways in ways that meet the needs not just of motorists but of all road users, whether they're pedestrians, transit riders, people in wheelchairs, etc. The study that's in front of you was funded under our Unified Planning Work Program and undertaken by the consulting firm of CDM Smith, formerly Wilbur Smith Associates. And RTC staff would like to acknowledge the contribution to this study of Mr. Barry Banks, the Wilbur Smith Associates project manager, who regrettably passed away this spring before he could see the culmination of his work. But I personally would like to pay tribute to him and what he contributed, and I believe he has presented before this committee before, so some of you may know him. The study was developed in cooperation with staff from the local planning and public works departments, as well as other interested agencies. Many of these stakeholders attended a workshop held last year that was sponsored by the National Complete Streets Coalition with support from the Southern Nevada Health District. And we appreciate everybody who worked with us on this study. The study report includes a statement of policy that staff is requesting be formally adopted. For your convenience, that statement of policy has been extracted from the document and is reproduced as the first element of your backup. The report and the policy statement have been reviewed by your Metropolitan Planning Subcommittee, the Transportation Access Advisory Committee, and the Executive Advisory Committee, all of whom recommended approval. Why study complete streets? Well, during the decades prior to the recent recession, Southern Nevada, as everybody knows, experienced sustained growth in the economy that in turn created ever greater demand for transportation, for commuters, for visitors, for freight movement. Many new housing and commercial developments took place in areas that had little or no existing infrastructure. Faced with these challenges, the RTC and our partners in the local agencies planned, designed, and built an impressive roadway network throughout the valley. The voters of Clark County showed their recognition of the need and supported the local taxes that funded much of this expansion. The result was hundreds of miles of new and widened roadways to meet the needs of travelers around the region. As drivers, the traffic never moves as fast as we would like it to do. But the system we built during those years met the needs of Valley residents and supported our 24/7 economy. RTC and the local jurisdictions complied with the prevailing standards of the day when they designed and built the roads in regard to road layout, sidewalks, and safety. But at heart, this was a system designed to move large numbers of automobiles and trucks. That was an understandable priority. If we hadn't done it, the region would have ground to a halt. But the downside was too many roads like this, good for cars and not much else. These roads move a lot of traffic, they move it well, but they were not designed to be pleasant places if you happen to be walking, if you're on a bicycle, if you're riding transit, or if you're in a wheelchair. Over the last 10 years or so, local planners and developers have come to realize that the need to move traffic, while important, needs to be balanced by a consideration of the needs of other road users. Starting with the development community in Summerlin, we have started to see streets designed with detached sidewalks and more landscaping. In recent years, cities have revised their development codes to support these ideas in both the newer master plan communities and in some of the older downtown areas. RTC is developing a regional network of bicycle lanes and routes, complementing the development of multi-use trails by the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition. RTC has emphasized the improvement of sidewalks as an adjunct to many of our recent investments in improved transit operations. The Complete Streets study and policy that is recommended for adoption sets out 7 key points that will provide a framework for the RTC policies and actions to move forward. An important rider to the policy that's in front of you will enable the RTC to support Complete Streets by expanding the range of activities that are eligible to receive reimbursement from RTC funds. On a case-by-case basis, this could include such things as improving curb cuts, sidewalks, landscaping, and street lighting. The Complete Street study also includes a discussion of the principles that would underlie the application of Complete Streets concept in this region and provides extensive guidelines on how this might work in practice. Those guidelines cover such aspects of policy as appropriate cross-sections depending on the width of right-of-way, the desirable layout of pedestrians, parking, and bicycle elements, and the criteria that govern how road diets might work. That's the concept that maybe we would narrow down lanes to provide more room for widened sidewalks. To quote the report, not every street can become a complete street, but virtually every street in the region can include Complete Streets elements to its benefit. The thing about Complete Streets is we are promoting transportation choices. We're giving people on 2 legs, on bicycles, in wheelchairs, choices that all too often they don't really have right now. The other point is it's what's called context sensitive. Basically, some types of treatments make logical sense in some areas and not on others. We recognize that. With the conclusion of the study, staff are looking forward to how we move forward to see this idea implemented. We are identifying studies and projects in our Unified Planning Work Program to see how we can move this thing forward. We're also looking to seek funding from the federal government through what are known as discretionary funds. One can potentially use some of those to move forward with locally determined improvements in the region. One of the presenters at the Complete Streets Workshop has developed a design manual that was initially intended to help Complete Streets implementation in the Los Angeles area. Elsewhere in your current agenda, you have approved an interlocal agreement with the Southern Nevada Health District that will provide funding to modify that design manual to meet the needs of this region. Some aspects of that work will be done over the summer and will serve as a basis for revision to our standards and policies that Mike Haddon will be taking through the various committees that advise the Executive Advisory Committee so that we can then actually start designing and building these roads. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions the members of the Commission may have.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Councilwoman March.
Thank you very much. This is a day worth celebrating to see the work that's been done, and this is an indication of what our streets will look like in Southern Nevada, the streets that we're able to bring under Complete Streets. And I wanted to ask you, will we each be getting a copy of the final report when it's made available?
Yes, certainly. The report was included both in text and in CD in your backup. We will be putting a nice cover on it, and yes, we will be producing copies for all members of the Commission.
Wonderful. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do more public education around the whole idea of Complete Streets and why we do it. And, you know, I think that's all part of the whole vision of having a sustainable Southern Nevada. And I know that you're involved with the work that's being done with the HUD grant for sustainable communities, and I think this will play a key part in that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. If I may, I'd like to place the letter from Dr. Sands. Did we receive this as part of the backup? So it is great, and just indicating his support for the work that's being done. So we need a motion for approval. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and thank you for the hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. That brings us to our last agenda item, which is our last citizens' participation period.
Those wishing to speak to the Commission, please step forward, state your name, and take a look at our traffic signal. When you see it starting to blink, your time's winding down. When the red light comes on, you'll be asked to finish.
Dorothy Barnes.
Miss Barnes, how are you?
I'm fine. You're looking good. I've been meaning to attend that Scottish Festival one year when I find out how to get there. I don't have a car. They say it's not on the bus route. Floyd Lamb Park, I believe that's where it's at. But I'm here to address the Commission today. I'm still experiencing a problem with when I'm riding the bus. I had a heated argument with two other senior ladies just recently over the people that's getting on the bus line. And I've asked them to do something about it, let me know how this thing is set up, whereas when I'm on the bus, people are told to lie on me to keep my name on this program. And I've tried to work closely with the police department and other law enforcement agents to get this problem cleared up, because I've been used to sponsor a program where they're selling illegal drugs. And it's tied in with the bus system, whereas people are on the bus lying and using me to get money to either buy the drugs or sell the drug. And my life is threatened. And I know some gentleman, I want to get his name, he's not coming forward. He's threatening that he better not get busted for selling drugs. But I told Narcotics Division this today, I did not give anyone in this city permission to set up a drug dealing operation. I've had 2 family members shot to death, a nephew and a youngest brother who was ex-military police, murdered over these drugs. I have friends I've lost friendship with fiending for drugs. I've recommended West Care. I know a lot of them are fearful in going in drug treatment centers because they fear for their life, because they've gotten mixed up with some maybe they didn't understand to the extent how dangerous it is, the fool with illegal drug trafficking. Well, I'm trying to curtail them off this ticket of mine. I'll help sponsor people into jobs in college. But I will not have people threaten me to sell their drugs. And using the bus system to get on the bus to lie, to keep my name on it, causing me to have a problem with my health. I will not live poor and homeless and be made sick and put in distress with my health condition. After the Lord bless me, see, June 27, I'll be 55 this year. Turn 55, I'm hitting the golden 50s. I cannot afford to be victimized and have my family victimized with people dealing illegal drugs and using the bus system to lie and set up their drug operation. And I need something done. I need some direction. I need to know, you know, I'm from Louisiana. I don't know if they was doing it that way there, but I told the police when I first came here as a tourist, I didn't want that kind of stuff to follow me, and I found out they was doing it here. And I've tried to address the people. If they'll come forward and talk to me, I'll talk to them, but none of them want to talk to me because I guess they think like your mama catch you doing something, she have a switch or something to punish you. And they hide now behind people that'll tolerate them, but it's just too much for me to have to deal with in this heat. It's very hot out there right now, you know, and it's going to get hotter before the summer is over, I imagine. And something has to be done to control this type situation. And I've asked them to remove my name off the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Mr. Kelly, is it?
Yes. Hang on, my battery decided it wanted to go on coffee break. I have, as I mentioned, I've been here just shy of 30 years, which means I have now been a Nevadan longer than I've been anything else. However, I must point out that I think a potential solution to all of this bickering that's going on about contracts, division of service, such like that, could be ameliorated, but unfortunately it would involve flying in the face of 150 years approximately of Nevada, as I have come to refer to it, small L libertarian ethic, and certainly fly in the face of the